Stengel, are you ready to proceed, sir?
I am, Your Honor. Thank you. Good afternoon. Mike Stengel, and along with Mr. Steve Leffler, it's our privilege to represent Demetrius Haley. Choices, ladies and gentlemen. If you want a theme for this trial, I'd suggest to you it's choices. Demetrius Haley chose to become a Memphis police officer. He entered the MPD Training Academy in August 2020 at the height of COVID, graduating in January of 2021. From there, like all graduates, he rode in a two-man car with what they call a field training officer, a senior officer who helps new graduates bridge the gap between the classroom and enforcing the law on the streets of Memphis. He successfully completed that field training program, became a patrolman, and in October of 2022, he was assigned to the Scorpion team. Scorpion Team 1. Scorpion was different, ladies and gentlemen. As Mr. Hagerman said, they didn't have a precinct to patrol. They dressed differently. The Scorpion unit was a street crime abatement team created by the police department's command staff. And it was their job to go, they were assigned not a precinct, not a regular area to patrol, but based upon crime data that the command staff reviewed, they would send each Scorpion team, there were 3 different teams, to a particular area for a few weeks at a time. The highest crime, most dangerous areas of Memphis. And they were to saturate the area. Now they looked different and they dressed different, they had different cars. They were undercover cars. You've seen some of the video. Those 2 Dodge Chargers were Scorpion team cars. They were undercover. Unlike regular Memphis patrol cars, there was no in-car video on these undercover cars. They also had interior blue lights, not on top like patrol cars. They dressed differently. They were in all black. They wore sweatshirts, hoodies, black pants. They had tactical vests, police written on them, all in reflective. But they also wore masks, what I call watch caps. They had different radios. They had their own radio channel that was encrypted. Only the Scorpion team members could hear the radio traffic, unless, of course, they switched to the precinct channel or switched over to reach the dispatcher. And their job, designed by the command staff, was to go and saturate these high crime areas and make traffic stops. The law is very clear, and these officers were trained at the academy, that the United States Supreme Court has said, as long as you see a traffic violation, it is okay to make a traffic stop, even if you have an ulterior motive. And the command staff gave the Scorpion team members an ulterior motive. They needed a traffic stop. They needed a traffic violation to make a valid stop. But they weren't making the stop to write a ticket. They were looking for people with warrants. They were looking for guns. They were looking for gun switches. And they were looking for drugs. They were there to suppress crime. You'll also learn, as all policemen are trained and know, there are 2 types of traffic stops. An unknown stop, which might be me being blue lighted and pulled over driving home from court today, or a high-risk stop. High-risk stop may be stopping somebody who you know has just carjacked and shot somebody and is driving the carjacked car. There's no such thing as a low-level traffic stop because policing is dangerous. You never know what you're going to encounter. If I'm an unknown traffic stop getting pulled over, I may have a gun waiting for the officer to approach. So it's either unknown or high risk. January 7th, 2023. About 8:20 p.m. at an intersection on Riverdale near Quince Road. You'll learn these streets over the next week to 2 weeks. Just north of I-385, Emmett Martin, a member of Scorpion Team 1, gets on the radio and says he's got a speeding blue Nissan Sentra that's just blown a light. He's going to pull it over. Demetrius Haley, on duty with him on Scorpion Team 1, is right in the area and acknowledges he'll assist with the traffic stop. Another Scorpion Team member, whose name you've heard, Preston Hemphill, is also right there. He acknowledges he'll assist with the traffic stop. Driving down Riverdale, which has a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, Martin turns on his blue lights, turns on his siren, and the blue Nissan Sentra chooses not to pull over. When choosing not to pull over, he chooses to commit at least 2 more traffic violations you'll hear of. He's still speeding, and at least twice he switches lanes without turning his signal, putting another car in between him and Martin. Martin, Haley, and Hemphill are following the blue Nissan Sentra down Riverdale in excess of 45 miles an hour. The blue Nissan Sentra turns right on East Rains, and East Rains is also 45-mile-an-hour zone. There's a little crest in the hill before they get to Ross. The proof will show that Preston Hemphill got up to 64 miles an hour in this 45-mile-an-hour zone and was falling behind. He lost the other cars as they crested that hill. But he crests the hill, and right there at the intersection of Ross and Rains, the light is red. The blue Nissan Sentra is in the left turn lane. Demetrius Haley's car is on the left side, the driver's side, parked. Emmett Martin's car is angled at the front passenger side. Hemphill, and you'll see his body on camera. You'll see virtually the entire stop because you see Demetrius Haley leave his car, you see Emmett Martin leave his car, and of course the camera shows Hemphill leaving his car. The driver's choice not to stop, and you'll hear that it was obvious that the driver was avoiding pulling over when blue lighted with the siren. Martin announced on the radio that in police talk, the driver was getting little on him, disappearing, running, fleeing by car. That in and of itself, according to the officer's training and procedures, changes what would have been a routine unknown traffic stop to elevate the risk somewhat. Makes sense. People pull over for lights and sirens. When the Nissan Sentra stopped right by the cars that he had been driving away from, that again increased all of the officers' awareness and concern because it was unusual behavior. Very unusual. Consistent with his training, Demetrius Haley got out of his car and used, as he was trained, what they call verbal judo. He loudly and profanely, you'll hear it, ordered the driver out of the car. The driver chose not to get out of the car. Haley approached, opened the door, and he's continuing to give commands. Commands are being given. Haley approaches the door, opens it, and the driver leans away from him. Haley moves up the Memphis Police Department's use of force continuum that you started learning a little bit about last week. And he uses soft hands. He reaches in to get the driver out. The driver pulls away from him. Haley reaches back in, pulls him out, and it was Demetrius Haley. Demetrius Haley on the driver's side, getting the driver out. I think Mr. Hagerman misspoke when he said it was Haley, or it was Martin who pulled him out of the car. But it'll become clear as you look at all of the video and listen to the testimony. Haley got him out of the driver's seat using the soft hands technique and put him in the A-frame of the car, between the body of the car and the open driver's door, to get his hands behind his back, handcuff and detain him for this increased risk traffic stop. The driver chose not to comply and not to allow his hands to be cuffed, and indeed spun around on Haley in the A-frame with Emmett Martin and Preston Hemphill there. At that moment, once the driver has chosen that, Emmett Martin announces, "Let go my gun." Now the danger and risk has dramatically increased. All officers are trained to keep track of your gun. Never let a suspect get your gun. With that announcement, the driver is taken to the ground where he still is not compliant. He still chooses to blade himself rather than follow the commands to lay flat. He is still resisting having his arms put behind his back, and Demetrius Haley uses his pepper spray. They're down on the ground, unable to control the driver at this point, and in an attempt to pepper spray the driver, Haley gets himself. At that moment, the driver chooses to continue not to comply. He gets up and he gets away from all three officers. As he is running, you'll see he's initially running towards an open car door on a vehicle that's running. Officer Preston Hemphill shoots his taser and frankly misses. It does not connect. The driver is off running southbound on Ross. Haley and Hemphill chase him. The chase is very short, a couple hundred yards at the most, before Hemphill falls behind. The driver's frankly faster than Hemphill. Haley is overcome by the pepper spray. You'll learn and see, the proof will show how debilitating pepper spray is. Hemphill tells dispatch, "We've got one running. Let everybody know to be on the lookout." Gives a general description of the guy and says he's been pepper sprayed and tased. Haley is virtually blind from the pepper spray. As he and Hemphill are getting back to the cars half a block or so away, Haley is stopped and needs Hemphill's help to cross the street. He's virtually blind. For the next 7.5 minutes, Haley, with Hemphill's help, is at Ross and Rains with the police cars, literally trying to pry his eyes open to have water dumped on him to try and flush out the pepper spray. Proof will also show that there's no real remedy for pepper spray. It's trying to flush your eyes with water, it's getting air at it, and time. 7.5 minutes, Hemphill is repeatedly dumping water on Haley's face and eyes as he's trying to recover. During those 7.5 minutes, they're still hearing the police radio and dispatch. And Haley learns that other Scorpion officers, a two-man car first, driven by Mills with Bean in the passenger seat, see the suspect at Ross and Castlegate, and he's taken off on them, and they are running after him on foot. So Haley learns through the radio that the suspect has run again, a third flight. And also, while he is still trying to recover at Ross and Rains, it comes over the radio from Justin Smith that they've caught the suspect. They need more cars because he's fighting. After 7.5 minutes, there's been enough recovery, enough water, hearing his fellow officers need help. Haley puts his tactical vest back on, gets in the car, and heads to Bear Creek and Castlegate. Arriving there, the times will mean more over the next several days, but he arrives there at 8:36 and 15 seconds. When he arrives, he knows this is the suspect. He knows he's fled 3 times. He knows he's gotten away from Haley, Hemphill, and Martin. He knows he's fled from Mills and Bean. He knows that Justin Smith has called for more cars because he's fighting. As he arrives, the driver and a couple of officers are down towards the ground. The driver has a handcuff on his left wrist, nothing on his right wrist. He is not detained, and the police training is that single cuffed wrist is a weapon, a potential weapon, very dangerous. Haley runs up and chooses to follow his training using now the hard hand technique, a single leg strike, a kick, to his upper arm, a muscled pressure point clothed area of the body, in an attempt to get that arm released so that the other officers on the ground with him can get him handcuffed and detained. It works, and within seconds, the driver is handcuffed and detained. Seconds after that, consistent with his training, Haley gets on the radio and tells dispatch, "We need an ambulance. The suspect has been pepper sprayed, tased, and everything, is his exact phrasing. You're going to hear medical proof. You'll hear from the medical examiner and at least one forensic pathologist. The proof's going to be virtually identical. Cause of death goes back to blunt force trauma to the head, which led to a stroke or strokes, which led to cardiac arrest, and over the next 3 days, organ failure and death of the driver at St. Francis Hospital. All of the force and all of the trauma is on video, and you're going to see it. You have to piece a little bit together because some parts are on different officers' body-worn cameras and some on the Skycop cameras. But they all have a timestamp on them, and the body-worn cameras all have an identical camera number that I call an axon number. It's an axon camera system, AXON, and then a lengthy number. So you'll know whose body-worn camera you're watching at the time you're watching it. At Ross and Rains, Demetrius Haley used soft hands in this high-risk traffic stop to get him out of the car, used pepper spray, and helped to take him to the ground after Martin announced, "Let go my gun." The driver took off and ran. Hemphill used or attempted to use his taser there at Ross and Rains. At Castlegate and Bear Creek, you'll see that the driver was tackled. I believe it was Officer Bean that was the first one to reach him and tackle him. Bean and Smith were the first two there. Mills was the third one there. Mills used pepper spray 3 times and the asp baton on the same right arm. Martin, you've seen once, kicked him twice in the head and punched him 5 times in the head and face. All before Demetrius Haley arrived. Proof and common sense show that you can't intervene in something you weren't there for and didn't know about. Demetrius Haley had a duty to render aid, and he did. Once the suspect was detained, he virtually immediately called for an ambulance. While this is going on, back at Ross and Rains, Hemphill is still with the cars, and of course he has notified the dispatch that medical response is needed because of the use of pepper spray and a taser. Again, that's Memphis Police Department protocol procedure. Immediately after Demetrius Haley left Ross and Rains, I say immediately, virtually immediately, within a minute or so, the fire department arrived at Ross and Rains in response to dispatch's request because of Hemphill's call. It was engine 55, and there were 2 EMTs, emergency medical technicians, riding on it. Robert Long and Jamichael Sandridge. They got out with their bags and they approached Hemphill there at Ross and Rains, and while they were there, they learned that they were called out not to treat an officer who had been pepper sprayed, but to treat the suspect who had been pepper sprayed, been tased, had been fighting with the officers, and had fled, and was at a different location several blocks away. They also learned that the suspect would not be brought back to Ross and Rains for treatment, but they were to go down Ross to Castlegate. They did. Once they got to Ross and Castlegate, and you'll learn Bear Creek is a small cove cul-de-sac a block up from Ross, a block up Castlegate from Ross. There were so many police cars at that intersection and along Castlegate that the fire engine couldn't get up there. So Long and Sandridge got off, they took their blue trauma bag, walked up. They were directed to the suspect, who was handcuffed and seated up against one of those two undercover cars you saw. And they also overheard officers saying at the scene of Castlegate and Bear Creek that they believed that the suspect was on something. While those EMTs were there, they, along with law enforcement, got the suspect's wallet out and learned that his name was Mr. Tyre Nichols. He was nothing to Demetrius Haley or any other Memphis police officer other than the driver of that blue Nissan Sentra until that point. When Long and Sandridge arrived and were directed to Mr. Nichols, he was alert, he was oriented, he was answering questions. His speech was slightly slurred. He told them he was 29 years old. He admitted that he had been drinking some alcohol. He sort of ignored the question about drug use. He neither admitted nor denied drug use. He just really didn't respond. He didn't complain of pain. He didn't say anything about what had happened. He repeatedly said, "I want to be uncuffed," and stood up. Those EMTs spent the next 14 minutes standing and observing Mr. Nichols. They also, can't remember if I said, they checked and his pupils were pinpoint, which to them was indicative of the suspected drug use. Because of that, EMT Long called for an ambulance. He and Sandridge stood and observed Mr. Tyre Nichols for roughly 14 minutes. And you'll see them. No vital signs taken, although their paperwork said they were. After that 14-minute mark, an officer, off camera, but you hear the voice. Now, believe that it's Justin Smith, but you'll make your own determination. But an officer says something, "Hey, are you okay?" directed at Mr. Nichols. EMT Long is there, and he notices a change in Mr. Nichols' condition. He performs a sternal rub, which is basically a knuckle in the breastbone, to see how responsive he is. And Mr. Nichols responds to that. At that same time, the ambulance, Unit 28, arrives. It is staffed by another EMT, Jalen Jones, and a paramedic by the name of Jesse Guy. The paramedic has more education and is able to provide a higher level of care and perform procedures and administer drugs that an EMT can't. Mr. Guy takes over the care, immediately gives him Narcan, intranasal Narcan, in an attempt to counteract what may be an overdose. By this time, Mr. Nichols has gone from alert and oriented to responsive to pain to unresponsive. The paramedic starts an IV, more Narcan is given, he is loaded onto a stretcher, put in the ambulance, and the ambulance is off to St. Francis Hospital. Virtually when back doors of the ambulance are closed and EMT Long from Engine 55 ends up driving the ambulance in the back with Mr. Nichols and treating him, the paramedic Jesse Guy, the other two EMTs, Jermichael Sandridge and Jalen Jones, who had arrived in the ambulance. He is treated, he goes into cardiac arrest, and gets CPR, various drugs, and is transported to St. Francis Hospital, where the care is transferred to the emergency room. Ladies and gentlemen, the facts here are tragic and a tragedy. Demetrius Haley was present for portions of this. But a tragedy does not mean a homicide occurred, and Demetrius Haley's presence during portions of this tragedy does not mean he engaged in criminal conduct. The proof is going to show that Demetrius Haley chose to engage in policing, which can get ugly and dangerous and dirty. And he followed his training that night. The state has brought murder, kidnapping, assault, oppression, and misconduct charges against Demetrius Haley. I'm not going to spend time on the elements, but I want to talk very, very briefly about the state's burden. We all know it's beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the highest burden in our legal system. It's not an insurmountable burden, but it is the highest burden. It is such a high burden that it is higher than the burden the state would have to meet if this was a case where it was trying to take custody of a child from his or her parent. That's how high beyond a reasonable doubt is. Demetrius, the state will not be able to prove the elements of this murder, kidnapping, assault, oppression, or misconduct charges beyond a reasonable doubt against Demetrius Haley. He thanks you for the time you've already given and for your paying attention to the proof. Listen to the proof. Learn these intersections in Memphis. Look at the times on the videos. Look at who did what and who was where, and hold the state to this high, high burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you for your time and attention.
Yes, sir. happen to know we have a second grade teacher in amongst us. So when the kids come back from lunch and you stick them in a hot classroom, what happens? There you go. So, Judge, with Your Honor's permission, could they stand up, just stretch a moment? Because
I mean, if anyone needs to stand up, or if you need a drink or need a rest, then you all are welcome to let us know. We will take that rest. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and proceed.
I just don't want you falling asleep during mine. Okay? All right, I've done this 32 years. And in 32 years of trial practice, I've never read my opening statement ever. But this is probably going to be my last jury trial, and so I want to make sure I don't miss any points. So I'm going to stay pretty close to my notes. I figure it's good enough for a preacher, it's good enough for me. Okay? I have the pleasure of representing Mr. Justin Smith. Justin, could you stand? This trial started with an indictment. And as it's been explained to you, the indictment is giving notice to the defendants what the charges are against them. And you've heard what those charges are, ranging all the way from second-degree murder, all the way down to official oppression, kidnapping, aggravated assault. All right? What you may or may not know, and it may or may not make a difference to you, is the indictment for murder actually was filed and then publicized within days of Tyre Nichols' death. The indictment came before the autopsy was ever gotten back on Tyre Nichols. The indictment occurred before the toxicology reports on Tyre Nichols ever came back. Then we went through that. As criminal defendants, you didn't go through the process of the indictment, turning yourself in, etc., and then we just go on the process of discovery. So there's a lot of things that we know in our files that you don't know yet, because the state has to give us what's called discovery. Okay, and so from that discovery is what we piece together our defense, and it's what the district attorney uses to prosecute. Now, Mr. Hagerman said a very common theme that we heard in Memphis a lot for the last over 2 years: justice for Tyre. Justice for Tyre. Tyre died, which, by the way, is a tragedy. It's a tragedy whenever anything that God created dies before its time. It's tragedy. Everyone was screaming and yelling, justice for Tyre. And these indictments came down targeting 5 police officers. And about the only thing they had in common were they were on the Scorpion team and that they were at Bear Creek and Castlegate that night. You've heard from the lawyers about someone named Emmett Martin. Emmett Martin's not here. The reason Emmett Martin's not here is he's already pled guilty to killing Tyre Nichols. He's not here. Desmond Mills has also pled guilty to causing the death of Tyre Nichols. He's the one with the baton. I'm going to baton the fuck out of you. Give me your hands. Give me your hands. That's that guy. He's already pled guilty to causing the death of Tyre Nichols. What you may or may not know is they're awaiting sentencing. Their sentencing, some of it's going to depend not only on the crime that they pled guilty to, but it's also going to depend on their testimony here and how favorable or how cooperative they are with the state. Don't think for 1 minute, if somebody's looking at life in prison, they won't come in here and point the finger and say whatever they can say so they can get favorable recommendations from the government to reduce their sentence. Okay, those 2 guys aren't here. The guy who punched Tyre Nichols, I think 5 times. And you're also going to hear from the pathologist that says that there are 5 distinct tears in the brain, coincidental, that killed Tyre. What happened is that his brain starts shutting down from the injury. It then affects your central nervous system, and his went into heart failure. Okay? During that period of time while they're waiting on the ambulance, only 1 cop is monitoring Tyre's respiration rate. And you'll hear him, Mr. Stengel was right, you'll hear him on tape saying to these EMTs, who I'd be willing to bet we're all going to walk away from this saying those EMTs were the most incompetent people in the whole world. Because Justin Smith said either 3 or 4 times, hey, do you have the baggy thing to put on him? It's a rebreather to give someone oxygen. A cop is telling EMTs, do you have the baggy thing to put on him? You'll see and you'll hear Justin Smith saying, his O2's getting low. Where's your green bag? You'll hear that phrase, green bag. The green bag is the bag that has the oxygen canister in it that EMT Long was supposed to have brought with him. By the way, before I forget, there's some confusion about EMTs and ambulances, okay? In Memphis, what happens is they will dispatch a fire truck first, and on that fire truck are EMTs. So that's who first arrives, okay? Then, if the medical care is higher or needed higher, that's when dispatch will then send an ambulance. And you'll hear proof that ambulances are in very short supply in Memphis. So what they'll do is, in order to span that gap, they send the fire truck first. Now, I think Mr. Stengel misspoke. Hemp Hill is not who called for medical. It was Justin Smith, and you'll hear it at 13 minutes and 15 seconds on the dispatch tape. You'll hear that tape. The whole interaction starts at 9 minutes. That's when they're over there fighting at Ross and Raines Road and doing all that, okay? And the call goes out saying, hey, we have a black male suspect running southbound Ross Road who's been tased and sprayed. Every cop who's going to come in here and testify will say, when you hear that, that means there's been a fight. If someone's been tased and sprayed and he's running, there's been a fight. And so when an officer calls for assistance because of a fight, you come. That's what Mr. Perry mentioned about how they actually let a suspect go so they could respond to help, okay? But listen on the dispatch tape. At 13 minutes and 15 seconds, it's Justin Smith who comes up on the radio, who's not even there. He's responding to the call for assistance. He tells a dispatcher how to do her job, apparently. Hey, go ahead and roll MFD now if chemical agent has been used. Because they know they're going to decontaminate it. Hey, that was Justin who called before they ever even caught Tyre Nichols. So at the end of this, don't tell me that Justin Smith was not concerned about the medical care of an unknown suspect who had not been searched, who had been fighting with the police, who had been tased and sprayed, that Justin Smith was responding to. Now, Justin Smith, if anything, is a horrible navigator. So he rolls up to Raines and Ross Road where Hemp Hill is standing, and this is what Mr. Perry was talking about. You'll see on the body cam, you'll see Justin pull up, stop for like 2 seconds. He looks at Hemp Hill and says, which way do you go? Hemp Hill, you'll see him, he's a very young, very chubby, chubbier than me, white guy. He points and says, that way. Off Justin goes. So Justin goes into the neighborhood because his experience tells him if you don't catch somebody pretty soon and set up a perimeter, you're not going to get them. And if he's been sprayed and if he's been tased, by the way, this after the fact business about the taser didn't work, nobody knew that then. Okay? You'll see Tyre Nichols run away from the taser, taking his coat off. I don't even think Tyre Nichols didn't know that he had been tased. But if you don't get medical to check someone out, you could find them later in a bush dead from an asthma attack, shock, whatever, heart attack, whatever. So Justin calls dispatch. Can we set a perimeter up so we can get this guy? Okay? And as Justin's sitting at a stop sign, trying to figure out where he's going, he looks up and he sees Tyre Nichols running and Tadarius Bean chasing after him down a dark street. We people who are not cops, that don't work the 6 p.m. shift, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift, in the second most dangerous city in the United States, don't understand what it is to run down a dark street after a suspect who has now run from the cops 3 times and he's unsearched. You will hear proof that Justin Smith, in a short 4-year, 5-year period on OCU, that's organized crime, which is the umbrella to Scorpion, made over 1,000 felony arrests. Think about that. That's almost one a day. That's how dangerous Memphis is. We are the fifth most, this is FBI statistics, fifth most dangerous city in the world for murders. And Tadarius Bean is chasing this man down a dark street and tackles him. Justin's sitting in his car. He sees this happen. So Justin makes the choice. We hear about choices. Justin makes the choice to get out of his car and help Tadarius get this guy in handcuffs. Okay? Now, I may or may not misquote Justin. If so, please forgive me. The tapes will be my guardrails, okay? But the first thing Justin and Tadarius say is, bro, give me your hands. Give me your fucking hands. Man, just give me your hands. And they want to take issue with the fact that they had his hands, okay? But I want to tell you something, and every cop that's going to testify will tell you that as old as I am, if a cop grabs my hands and I don't release my arms, it'll take 3 cops or more to get those arms behind my back. So as they're screaming, give me your hands, and they've got their hands on him, that's like, give me your hands so I can put them behind your back and handcuff them. Okay, that's what that means. They don't have to say, sir, could you please relax the deltoid muscle on your arm so that I can take your arm and put it behind your back and safely handcuff you? No, give me your hands. Tyre must have known what it meant because he wasn't giving those hands. Okay? Justin was able to get one handcuff on the left wrist of Tyre Nichols. You'll see this in the video, okay? So imagine that handcuff. By the way, these are the actual handcuffs that were used to arrest Tyre Nichols. Now imagine this on my left wrist. This has not been clasped onto the right hand yet. Those serrated teeth right there, I flipped that one time, that's it. The Memphis Police Department trains their officers that if a suspect gets the cuffed hand away, you can use lethal force on them. Shoot them. Now that's what they train. Now while this is going on, Mills, and as Mr. Hagerman correctly stated, it's kind of a theme of this case, Mills came up and sprayed everybody in the group. He sprayed Nichols, he sprayed Bean, he sprayed Smith with very powerful what's called OC spray. It's pepper spray. Much more powerful than what you buy at Dick's or Academy Sports, okay? And you'll see training videos on that. One shot, one squirt in the eye will shut you down. You're not going to see, you're not going to breathe, and remember you're on a dark street with one handcuff. Justin wears glasses, as you can see. His glasses were knocked off in the fight. He's got pepper spray, he's breathed it in. And people want to take issue with what Tadarius and Justin were doing. Guess what Emmett Martin did, the one who pled guilty to killing him? Guess what Desmond Mills did, the one who pled guilty to killing him, when he sprayed it? Those two walked off and took a 1.5-minute break to get their breath back. And you'll see all this on video. You got Mills over there breathing, snotting, spitting. You got Martin who's like this big. Whoo, whoo, can't breathe. Not Tadarius and Justin. They still got their hands on him, on Nichols, trying to get him. And you'll see him bent over at 90 degrees. By the way, the white tennis shoes are Justin. Justin had blown his knee out the night before on another chase where he caught somebody. He wasn't even supposed to be at work. You'll hear from his wife. His wife told him not to go to work. He's been over. He also has they call it, someone's been calling it tactical vest, but it's a bulletproof vest, okay? Justin's bulletproof vest has 2 reflective strips along the rib cage. So it's real easy to keep an eye on Justin during this whole altercation. Tadarius, about the same, a little bit bigger than Justin, he has a black hoodie on, so he looks like a cone head as he's wrestling with Tyre Nichols. These cops arrest violent felons every night. And every cop who will come in here and testify will tell you that Tyre Nichols was the most difficult arrest they've ever made. He had superhuman strength. And I'll bet you right now you're asking the same question that everybody in the world was asking. Why did Tyre Nichols run from that first traffic stop with Emmett Martin, Demetrius Haley, and Hemphill? Why did he run? This traffic stop, traffic stops happen in Memphis all the time. Why did he spin on Haley in the A-frame of the car? By the way, if he's got a weapon on him, that's it. Why did he spin on Haley? When Haley and them, these big men, put him on the ground and he got up and ran away, why did he run away from that car? Why did he abandon his car? He's looking at a reckless driving charge. Whoop-de-doo in Memphis. I mean, you get a gold star in Memphis for that. Why did he run? Then you're going to see him just down the street on another Skycop camera. Not the one at Bear Creek Cascade, but another one. And you will see Tyre Nichols, the TBI agent, will come in here and testify that that's Tyre. Tyre's hiding behind a Toyota 4Runner. And he's peeking out from around the front of that Toyota as the Scorpion car comes through looking for him. When that Scorpion car goes by, Tyre comes out the other side of Lewis, makes sure it's gone on down there. He turns around and starts walking this way. Sure enough, 2 minutes later, Mills, who's not here, and Tadarius find Nichols walking nonchalantly through the front yard, somebody else's house. Tadarius says, "Hey!" Boom, off he goes. And that's that chase we're talking about, down a dark street. Tadarius caught him. Okay? Now, do you remember much was made about the definitions of second-degree murder? Unlawful, knowing, or intentional. And remember this phrase, reasonably certain. So, not reasonably expected, reasonably certain. When you hear about Justin Smith, and when you hear about Tadarius Bean doing what they did that night, there's no way those men should be responsible for Emmett Martin. You will also hear proof that Emmett Martin was deranged. Emmett Martin was deranged. In fact, to some people, he had admitted being homicidal. Yet his Lieutenant Smith, put him out on the streets anyway. Cops have to rely upon other cops, just like that surgical team that Keith Berry talked about. You've got to rely upon the other cops on your team to do the right thing at the right time. Okay? No one could have expected, much less be reasonably certain, that Emmett Martin would come and crush the brain of Tyre Nichols. And before you take my word on it about what kind of person Justin Smith is, you will hear proof that Justin Smith never allowed another cop to ever abuse a suspect. You say, well, that's great, Zummach. Everybody would say that. You will hear direct proof that not 1 month before this, Justin Smith turned in a Scorpion Team cop for slapping a handcuffed suspect. Just slapping. What Emmett Martin did was a heck of a lot more than slapping somebody. Justin Smith was proud to be a police officer. You will hear proof that's all he ever wanted to be. He wanted to be a cop since he was 10 years old when his mama was being abused and a Millington cop came to her assistance. He didn't have two nickels to rub together. He went to college and he only applied for one job out of college. That was with NPD. You will hear Justin Smith's former bosses, I'm talking about brass, people are really in charge. They're not worried about what NPD thinks about them coming in here and testifying. They're going to come in and say he was a kind and compassionate cop who protected suspects and he protected other officers. You will hear Preston Hemphill describe Justin Smith as kind and gentle. Yet he's standing here having lost his career, lost his reputation, standing charged with second-degree murder. So if you hear a little bit of frustration in my voice about that, that's what it is. So we're going to watch a bunch of videos, we're going to hear a bunch of audio, we're going to hear a bunch of foul language, and at the end, I think good things will happen for Justin. Because no matter what the politicians wanted done to Justin, see, indicting cops, that's a big thing nowadays. No matter what the politicians wanted done to all these cops, it's your word. You will be the final word whether or not Justin Smith broke the law. And I'm confident.